Good morning to Mr. Subra. Our group is Group Niels Bohr. Today, we would like to present our group assignment. And our group consists of me, Samji Fei, Lee Wing Jun, Yap Chin Yek, and Tan Li Xun. Our objective of this experiment is, firstly, to determine the relationship between the roughness of the table and the range of the ball. Secondly, to investigate whether the mass of the ball will affect the projectile range. Thirdly, to study the principle of energy conversion. After that, our apparatus and material used is smooth table, rough table, basketball, tennis ball, archer, and bucket. That's all from me. Next, welcome Wing Jun to introduce his setup of our experiment. Thank you.
Next, I will talk about our setup. There will be two motions included in our assignment, which we had already highlighted it in the slide. So our setup is an archer shoots an arrow with same strength and speed towards the ball on the table. When the ball is hit, the ball will then fall with different velocity due to two reasons, which includes the roughness of the table and the mass of different ball. Assume that air resistance is negligible. So the theory involved in our experiments are the principle of conservation of energy, the frictional force, the impulsive force, and the projectile motion. Next, I'll be moving on to the principle of conservation of energy. For the principle conservation of energy, when the string is pulled, an amount of elastic potential energy is produced. It then transfers onto the arrow and energy changes from elastic potential energy into kinetic energy when it is released. It then moves toward to the ball on the table at a constant speed. When the arrow hits the ball will move to the right of the table due to large impulsive force. The force will then push it until it projects from the table and drop into the bucket.
Alright, so next I will explain two theories that involved in our project, which are frictional force and impulsive force. On the smooth surface of the table, the velocity of the ball is actually higher because there is no frictional force is applied to the ball when it moves forward. There is no force needed to against the frictional force, thus the kinetic energy is higher, then the ball moves faster, and the projectile range is then longer. Right? So in the other hand, on the rough surface of the table, the velocity of the ball is lower because there is a frictional force applied against the ball when it move forward. So there is force needed to against the frictional force, thus the kinetic energy is lower and the ball will move slower and projectile range is then shorter. Next, I will go to another theory, which is the impulsive force. Alright, so when the arrow collide with the ball, the impulsive force occur. As you can see, alright, let's just assume that the force is 5 Newton, and the mass of the basketball is 0.41 kilogram, and the mass of tennis ball is 0.0585 kilogram. By these two values, we can actually get the ratio of the mass for the basketball and tennis ball, which are 7:1. Okay, so now let's assume that the mass of arrow is constant, which is x, and we can actually apply the formula with the mass and also the mass of the arrow, which is constant, and finally we can get the ratio of impulsive force of basketball and tennis ball, which is 7:1. Okay, so by this we can get one conclusion, which is the higher the mass of the ball, the higher the impulsive force. Okay, so next I will pass to Li Xun, and he will talk another theory. He will explain another theory. Right, thank you.
I'm Li Xun, thank you Jingik. Now I will continue our project for the section about projectile motion that occur in this project. As my teammate mentioned just now, after we shoot the arrow will hit the different type of ball and then ball get in the bucket with different range and angle. When the arrow collides with the ball, the energy transfers to the ball and start to accelerate. As we know according to Newton's second law, F equal to ma. When the mass increases, the acceleration will decrease. Thus, a basketball will accelerate lower than a tennis ball, because mass of basketball more than a tennis ball. Then, the mass of the object will result in angle of the projectile as well. When mass of ball increase, the angle of the projectile will be smaller when it gets in the bucket. Hence, the range of the projectile of the basketball will be shorter compared to the tennis ball, which has a higher angle of projectile. As conclusion, which is the problem that we should solve and the objective for this project? When we complete and understand the theory in this project, we should know that the relationship between the roundness of the table and the range of the ball, the mass of the ball will affect the projectile range and the principle of energy conversion. For our first objective, relationship between the roundness of the table and the range of the ball. The rougher the table, the shorter the projectile range, because more force are required to overcome the frictional force, and it will cause kinetic energy of the ball will be lower. For our second objective, the mass of the ball will affect the projectile range. Because of Newton's second law, the mass will affect the acceleration of object. When mass get higher, the acceleration will be lower, and result in the shorter the projectile range. For our third objective, the principle of energy conversion, the mean of principle of energy conversion is energy cannot be created and can only be transferred from one object to another object. When we pull the bowstring, it will produce potential elastic energy. Then we shoot the ball. At the moment arrow hit the ball, the energy will convert to kinetic energy on the ball, resulting in movement of the ball. That's all for our project. Thank you for your time.